Well, good morning. The time being 9 a.m, I declare open the general meeting for the Gladstone Regional Council for Tuesday, the 19th of August, 2025. We have no apologies, councillors. All are present, although 3 are online. The right side of the table all have the flu, and they're online, though, teamsing in. Thank you, Councillor Wagner, Councillor Churchill and Councillor Holzheimer for teamsing in this morning. The next item on the agenda is our messages of condolence. Do we have any messages of condolence, councillors? No messages of condolence. We'll move to prior notifications of conflicts of interest, and I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor. Well, while you find that, I can... Okay. Not yet, but she's just tracking down the wording for that. Tanya, do we have any other conflicts of interest?
Well, we don't, Mayor, no.
No, that's okay. That's all right. We'll give you a second to find that.
It's downloading the emails, but it is related to agenda item. Thank you, Mayor. It is related to agenda item G3.1, Gladstone Region engaging in action together. I will be leaving the room as I am the chair and co-founder of Strong Communities Limited, and we have a current service agreement with the organisation. So that will be a declarable conflict of interest. Thank you very much.
And you're leaving the room?
I will.
Thank you. No vote required. Any other conflicts of interest, councillors? Nothing online? Excellent. We'll move to the next item, which is the Mayor's statement on current issues, and we'll start with the Green Metals and Industry Workshop and also the Community Forum. Thank you, Councillors McClintock, Holzheimer, Muscat, Patrick, for attending those events, and Councillor Wagner, I believe, has attended as well. Thank you very much for that, because it's very important that we keep involved in those major industry workshops and look forward to encouraging more industry development in the Gladstone region. On the 16th of August, we had the Art Science Innovation Festival. Thank you, Councillor Patrick, for attending that one. And of course, we had the Teddy Bears Picnic at the Tondoon Gardens, always a popular event with the younger generation. Thank you, Councillor Davis. And of course, yesterday was Vietnam Veterans Day, and we acknowledge our Vietnam veterans right across the region, including the ones that were attending the services in the region. I spoke with a few of our Vietnam vets yesterday at the Gladstone Cenotaph, and as I've said a number of times at the services, for those who are not aware, the soldier on top of our cenotaph in Gladstone is to represent a Vietnam veteran, and that's very appropriate considering how poorly they were treated when they returned home to Australia. It's nice that we can acknowledge their services to our country and to the world today. And of course, the Gladstone Region Show Holiday was on the August the 11th, and I know we've locked in the show holiday as the Monday of the Ekka for the rest of this term, so it's not to be discussed again in this term, but I think it will be discussed again, because at some point we need a show holiday that is region-wide, and as long as Wide Bay education system celebrates a different holiday, we are not including the whole region. So something we need to think about, obviously not for 27 or 28, but beyond that, we need to start working about how we can get Education Queensland to come on board, so we can have a show holiday that is from Rosedale to Raglan to Many Peaks and everywhere in between. Thank you, councillors. Coming up, we have the Golding Showcase, which is this Friday at the Gladstone Regional Art Gallery and Museum. That'll be a fantastic showcase at the gallery. It's all our younger generation, all their artwork on display, and it's always a very busy time for the gallery. We've got the Port to Park Fun Run on Sunday the 24th. I know councillors are either volunteering or participating, so thank you for that. We've got our Community Investment Program roadshows that are commencing around the region as well, including the Mount Larcombe Forum, the Gladstone Women Health Expo and Wellbeing Expo, on the 30th at the Phillip Street Communities Precinct, the Special Olympics Polar Plunge, thank you, Councillor Holzheimer, on the 30th as well, and of course the Baffle Creek Family Fishing Festival from the 22nd to the 27th of this month, coming up in September as well. All right, no more items on the Mayor's statement. I'll move to the confirmation of the minutes. G2.1, confirmation of the general meeting minutes for the 5th of August. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Davis. Seconded, Councillor Cameron. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Excellent, councillors. We'll move to our deputation now. We have a deputation from Gladstone Region Engaging in Action Together, and I'll invite Courtney, Lauren and my old schoolmate Sarah to the table. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, declaring a conflict of interest.
So, red's off on. Awesome, thank you.
I'm going to suggest that you were in Barney.
No, Capricorn.
Oh, no, sorry.
How dare you?
I was in Auckland. I was just trying to work out the letters. Of course, you wouldn't have been at Jacob.
No. Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming us here for this deputation. I'm very, very pleased to be here. As Mayor said, we go a long way back, so I'll try not to call you Matt. I'll try to refer to you as Mayor, but forgive me if I don't. I'm very pleased to be here and introduce Courtney, who is our Operations Manager, and Lauren, one of our project leads, to give you an update on GRT. I would like to acknowledge traditional owners and custodians on the lands on which we meet today. GRT is very appreciative of the relationship we have with traditional owners in our Gladstone area and pay our respects. I know that a deputation was given last year, so you know the background, but I wanted to centre us before we start with our update. Our vision is opportunity, equity and quality of life for everyone in our community. That is our remit from community. And our foundation assumption, our work is all about our families and our littlest people. We understand that if we support our littlest people, 0 to 5, to have a great start to life, they have happy, healthy parents, that they are statistically more likely to be successful and contributing members of our community with excellent opportunities. Courtney.
Beautiful. So our vision, goals and actions are those of our community, informed by the many voices on an ongoing basis. So for us, community includes everyone who lives, participates, impacts or is impacted by activity in the region. So before we can jump into solutions, we need to consider first and to understand more about the needs. And so we use local data, community voice and stories at all stages to understand priority areas and measures to progress sustainable wellbeing. So this looks like community-led working groups. For example, topic-specific working groups who progress and improve outcomes for specific cohorts or wellbeing outcomes. These groups seek to understand issues and needs more deeply, to design, test and implement solutions, including those identified in the by the community in the Gladstone Region Wellbeing Action Plan. And so as you can see, we currently have 9 working groups enabled by GRT made up of stakeholders who dedicate their time and effort to progress the work, and some with lived experience of the issues that they're working on. And in just a moment, we're going to take a little focus in on the most newest working group, the Data and Evaluation Working Group. But again, just to centre us, the Gladstone Region Wellbeing Action Plan, which is our contract with community, was designed and endorsed by community in 2022, and it reflects the issues, impacts and solutions that our community identified as priority. This is the long-term work aimed at changing decades of consistent trends and is focused on our families having access to life's basics, feeling independent and having purpose, our children having safe, happy and feeling safe, happy and loved, and in nurturing homes, and our children are starting school ready to learn and on track to thrive. And it would be really surprising to see our core community needs in the Wellbeing Action Plan change. So a lot of detail on this slide, but I will give a bit of a short overview, and all these resources that we're sharing as well are all accessible on the Gladstone Region Wellbeing website as well. So the work of GRT, as we said, is community-led, and it's also place-based, and it takes a collective impact approach to support creating change. This includes shared measurement, framework to track progress, which allows for continuous improvement, and it incorporates 4 key components: understanding, measurement, evaluation and learning. So measures in the measurement framework have been developed by our community over the last 4 years through workshops and public events discussing and dissecting data in the light of local experience. The measurement framework includes assessment of change across 4 elements, which are in the table there, but I'll just outline them because they're the support systems that we provide to enable our children and families to thrive. And they are the enabling conditions, systems of support, the early indicators of change, and long-term population impacts. So the newest working group of GRT formed in November 2024 through a community-wide invitation, and the Data and Evaluation Working Group measures the impact of communities' collective efforts in shifting the dial for improved wellbeing outcomes in our region. It's important to pause and reflect both on the phases of the work but also the paces of the work. And in the collective work of community, our community over the last 12 to 18 months has started to progress the improvement projects included in the Wellbeing Action Plan, and now the Data and Evaluation Working Group are able to start measuring the early indicators of change in community wellbeing in the context of GRT's contributions. So currently what we know is that the working group can measure change occurring, but as it relates directly to the impact of the GRT initiative, we've still got some time to go. We've still got a way to go. Our Data and Evaluation Working Group brings together local community members who have an interest or an experience in data and evaluation. The group facilitates quarterly reviews as part of an annual evaluation cycle, analysing data, interpreting findings and drawing out insights to answer 3 key evaluation questions. Has the intervention improved wellbeing in the region across the focus areas of our theory of change that we intended to shift? And where have the results made a difference? Is the impact effective, sufficient and sustainable and enduring? What improvements have been enabled in the system? And to what degree have the outcomes justified the investment? So community members of the working group kicked off the first evaluation workshop in November last year, and as it is early in the implementation of the Wellbeing Action Plan, it's too early to expect to see outcomes that impact population data. But the evaluation workshop served as a trial activity to establish the working group and the data analysis process. So the group continues to participate in quarterly reviews, and the next annual evaluation workshop is November this year. And just as a quick plug, if interest in the wellbeing and measurement and the data and evaluation working group has sparked interest, then we would love to hear from community members interested in participating.
So our region's spirit and rich history of collaboration and innovation was celebrated by over 50 local change makers and community champions across the Gladstone region at the Together in Action 2025 event on Thursday in February this year. So this event was championed by one of our working groups, the Gladstone Region Systems Leaders, to build the enabling conditions for systems change. So this working group have all been learning the principles of systems leadership and wanted to pull this event together to share these learnings with a wider audience. So the purpose of the event was to come together to celebrate the strengths of what people are doing for collaboration and innovation in the region. And so all of community were invited to submit a story. And some of the stories that were showcased was another one of our working groups, the First Nations Working Group, who shared their initiative, The Rites of Passage. So the Rites of Passage is a community-wide embrace of our First Nations students and celebrating their achievements as they transition from high school to adulthood and embark on the next chapter of their life with positivity and confidence. Another event, another story that was showcased was the Heart of Agnes came down from Agnes and shared about their initiative, the Moby Mat at the main beach, which is obviously a pioneering project, making Australia's first community-owned and operated beach accessibility mat, proving that with united effort and a focus on local strengths and contributions, communities can indeed thrive. We also had the Gladstone Regional Council and the Gladstone Disability Community Network, the DCN, come together and share about the efforts that they've been putting together for a thriving, inclusive community with their council access and inclusion plan, which demonstrates the positive impact of working in partnership with community to include diverse voices in shaping our region's roadmap for improved accessibility and inclusion. And we had CQ University also share a story as well about their work that they're doing in STEM in local schools, Barrelin Weber, Place of Learning. So that's an innovative program designed to engage First Nations primary school students in the world of science, technology, engineering and mathematics through connection to country as well. And a lot of the feedback that we heard from that event was just how energising it was to come together as a community and celebrate those strengths. Often we do focus a lot on the challenges, and so yeah, a lot of people walked away with really practical tools and lessons to apply to their own change-making journeys, which was exactly what the event was hoping to achieve. So another one of our initiatives, the Early Childhood Education and Care Educators and the Allied Health Professionals joined together in an event in February to improve access to early childhood development supports for our local parents, carers and families. So this was brought together by a shared passion to achieve improved outcomes for our local children and professional across education and health. So they actually came together on a Saturday, away from the busyness of their important weekday responsibilities, to understand how they could better support local children and families. And the local early childhood development supports workshop focused on the importance of early engagement of caregivers with appropriate supports to ensure healthy development in children for lifelong wellbeing. So the collaborative session explained local supports, outlined effective pathways to access them, and provided tips to navigate the referral processes. CQHHS led this session, and it aimed to ease the challenges of making effective referrals. The collective efforts were in response to feedback that we've been hearing from early childhood educators about how complex the referral process is and how overwhelming it is, and a real nervousness to be able to talk to parents around it because they just weren't sure themselves what the situation was. Through this workshop, they all met and they went through the referral process, and the feedback that we've been hearing since then from CQHHS is they're starting to see referrals come through that have all of the details they need to be able to know how to support that family, and they don't have to go back and forth. And we're also hearing from ECECs that they've been able to give families more tools and more support, and families are finding that process smoother. Another outcome from the February workshop, local ECECs recognised the importance of updating the childcare and kindy access data previously collected in 2023, published 2024, to grow collective understanding of access and availability of childcare places, and including physical versus actual capacity, waitlists and barriers to increasing places. So in 2023, there were 25 ECEC centres in the region, and 56% responded to the survey. In 2025, there are 27 ECEC centres in the region, and 100% have participated in the survey. Findings reports have been shared with participating ECECs to validate the integrity of these findings, and the completed report will be shared with the wider community for collective understanding and co-design of solutions by the end of this month.
Another one of our projects is our Housing Roundtable, which is a collaboration of stakeholders of 3 levels of government, and we are very appreciative of the support and attendance of our Gladstone Regional Council councillors. Mayor, I know that you've attended as well. It's a coordination of a whole of community approach with an overarching aim of the right mix of housing at the right location and at the right price. It is a work in progress. We appreciate that housing is complex, but community continues to tell us that it is a critical social issue and has impacts, we know, on children, workforce, our sector. The impact is ever extending. Our current work has been connecting with critical friends in state government, local government and state government. We are looking to connect through our Commonwealth partners with Commonwealth government departments. I think it's a testament to the challenge that different agencies in Commonwealth government are unsure who has the remit for housing, so we're leaving them to work that out and providing them with information about our community in the meantime. We have spoken with Department of State Development, Infrastructure and Planning, Economic Development Queensland, the Department of Housing, the Department of Premier and Cabinet and State Treasury most recently, as well as LGAQ, Q Shelter, CQ0, UDIA and the Urban Development Institute. So we are wide-reaching, and our aim in consulting and collaborating with those stakeholders is not so much for endorsement, but to understand their perspectives, for them to hear and for us to test our methodologies and to seek feedback from them, and also connection to other partners. That is a work in progress as well. So we have our housing strategy that has 5 elements. It is definitely in the understanding understanding the data, and then co-designing solutions phase. So we are currently meeting with stakeholders, including those who've been attending our housing roundtable, to re-engage with them to make sure that our work is still aligned to community need and community desires. We are developing monitoring dashboards, currently looking at median rent, new bonds, rental vacancies, social housing applications, dwelling types, vacancy data, trying to understand the demand to supply shortfalls. And I would like to call out officers of Gladstone Regional Council who have worked tremendously with us with our data sharing agreement, and have been really supportive of engaging with us back and forth to try and understand that data in a way that makes sense to us and for community. Our next step is co-designing an investment plan. That includes seeking feedback from developers on potential challenges and barriers, and, as I said, connecting with government to understand incentives and to look for a systems approach. They are just a highlight of some of our critical projects that we have. We've alluded to and called out the partnership that we have with Gladstone Regional Council. We have members on the leadership group participating in annual planning and regularly scheduled progress meetings, participation in issue-specific working groups. We've got collaborative community engagement that we work on together, projects and activities that we combine forces together, including library programs, some amazing library staff. I just heard about some wonderful library staff at Agnes, and here in Gladstone as well, very supportive of the community and of GRT's work with community, and our data sharing agreement. So I can't speak highly enough of that partnership, and really would like to acknowledge that. And I know that Lorna last year extended an invitation. I would like to echo that invitation. GRT belongs to community, it belongs to you, it belongs to everybody. We are very keen to continue to share updates through deputations. Our website is kept up to date with some amazing data analysis on there as well. I would urge you to have a look if you haven't, spend some time. It gives great insight into our community. Internally via our teams who are involved in collaborative projects, and also would like to invite anyone from council in our community to visit and meet your backbone team. I'm very happy to facilitate that. Please just pick up the phone, you'll find the number on our website, and would be really happy to welcome you. And thank you.
Good morning, ladies, and thank you for that very comprehensive presentation this morning. I suppose when I looked at the report and I saw your dotted out trajectory, the work actually started a lot earlier than 2020, but I acknowledge that the leadership team was formed in that 2021 sphere, and for me it's really pleasing to see the progress that has been made since that time. There's a lot of collaboration and a lot of hard work that has gone into the fruition of the work that happens. People sometimes still don't understand what the work is about, and for me, in simple terms, I put it that there are 3 levels of government involved, as well as community. It is all community-led. No one community is the same. And my question is to you, can you explain from the start, we were a pilot, Gladstone was a pilot group. Where do we sit now? Because I believe we've been escalated to a higher level. There's 3 standout project pilots that are now not pilots, they've been embedded, and I think there's Logan involved, is that right? And one other project?
Cape York Initiative.
Yeah, so can you just explain that also? that where we are with the project as well, compared to other regions that started that project. I'm not sure who would like to talk to that, Courtney? I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you're not to talk to the enhanced models, and then I can fill in with thriving places.
So just recognising that across our nation there are 10 SPSP communities, and it is very much every community are at different stages of the work. Of those 10 communities, 6 have been identified as having the readiness, and we reflect on Gladstone's readiness, not because the GRT initiative kicked off in 2021, but we recognise all the community and collaborative work that's set up our community's readiness to start this journey, and that's continued to support our journey through this. So there are 6 communities out of the 10 that have then been identified, which under the SPSP government terms are called the enhanced models, which are invited to participate in shared decision making with government partners, and also have received some local solutions funding to enable the acceleration, but also to encourage our community to innovate, test, trial and fail and learn, and some of those things that we are using that for is to help across some of the early years. And in terms of the shared decision making, we have been looking both locally. When that first invitation came, we have been gathering with our leads across sector to understand, well, what does shared decision making look like? What would we need to do to be ready for shared decision making? What would be our clear ask? What would we ask to do? Because we did hear a lot of from our community leads, we still want to have agency, we want to still have self-determination. So the things that we're really proud to do ourselves, but then there's probably those really wicked things that we can't do without the help of others. But also recognising, as we were just in, I think a month or two ago, just with our SPSP colleagues in Sydney, that this concept and this understanding and practice of shared decision making, our government partners are also in the same space as us, as communities, trying to figure out how do we make sense of this, and how do we come into the middle space to do shared decision making together.
Thank you. I've just got one more question
Yes,
to
all right.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And I suppose that's a great segue to my next question is, now that you're coming to that implementation stage, working with service providers and having very current data. A lot of service providers would only really have 1 or 2 sets of data that they could use for submitting for funding for different projects that were needed within our community. So you're filling that gap with the data that you are using. I'm just wondering, how do you see the navigation of working with actual service providers in the funding model, knowing that GRT monies, funding comes from similar, if not the same, monies that service providers would be applying for needed services within our region. Does that make sense?
So can I clarify,
Yeah.
mentioning there like how we're supported, because it mentioned data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're now giving service providers up-to-date data, but when they are applying for services that have been identified, are you in a position to then write letters of support because you're actually coming, or in that funding space, it's being seen as it's coming from the same funding space at some times? How can we mitigate? Is there any mitigation of getting around that at all, or discussing with government how you can support those support services, even though it could be seen as a conflict of interest? But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm hoping I can answer some of that. And then we have already participated, and there's examples where we have participated in reviews. For example, Communities for Children invited us, along with other service providers, to contribute to a review that was being done across the whole broader program funded by Department of Social Services. And so we partnered with Wendy and the C4C team to help make sure that that final submission as well had a really nice, robust and evidence piece to support the review. And that was not just from Gladstone, but across all communities that receive funding through either the Family and Child, well, I'm not going to get the right acronym, but it's of that stream that funds the C4C. So that's just an example of, yes, recognising that we both have some of our funding partners may be the same, whether it's state or federal, but that we have been able to join up with those actions as well.
Can I add, I would add to that our Commonwealth Government partners are very keen to learn, and I suppose we are a vehicle that they do that through, on what the potential barriers are to some of those funding streams. They have specifically asked us to share those with them, so I think that we provide a good avenue, not to advocate, but to share community voice back to government and to share concerns, challenges and barriers that our communities and different organisations within face. So I think in that way we're very aligned. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, and that probably gets to the crux of what I was asking is we don't want to be empowering but then having a barrier in our community of pushing things forward and getting that funding to our service providers. And if there seems to be some backwards and forwards with that, that's a really good opportunity to work with state and federal departments in trying to get that flow correct. Yeah, that's probably what I'm trying to highlight, and local government, so yeah.
Further questions, councillors? No? Well, thank you. Oh, hang on. Yes.
Last one. Just listening to, and I read through your presentation there, and the thing that stuck out to me is the Phillip Street precinct and what they do. So how do you see your alignment with them in the rolling out of your programs into the future?
I think there's a lot of hand in hand, a lot of hand in hand. We have Bri that also sits on our leadership group. I think our connection is really strong. We also have and echoing that strong connection as well with Nicole at the Neighbourhood Centre. Lauren meets and we do quarterly catch-ups as well to ensure that where we can, we're looking for those continued opportunities where collaboration might inspire or where we can work on challenges together. So I think it's definitely hand in hand with the Neighbourhood Centre.
Such an awesome facility we have at Phillip Street. Took a little while to get there, but we got there in the end. Determination, persistence, and never give up, even when the odds are against you sometimes. What a great facility our community has, and it's great to see that you're making good use of it as well. Well, thank you, Courtney, Lauren, and Sarah.
Thank you.
Not Olsen.
Not Olsen.
Jacobs. That's why I thought Barney. I thought, oh, Jacobs. She must have been Barney, but no, Capricorn. Auckland was the best. Anyway, thanks for attending this morning. I have
Thank you very much.
I move that the deputation be received, please. Thank you, Councillor McClintock. Seconded, Councillor Cameron. Sorry, Councillor Churchill. Grabbed you at the end. All in favour? That's carried. And we'll wait for the Deputy Mayor to rejoin the meeting. Noted, Deputy Mayor brought one coffee back. I'm only kidding. Okay, Officers' Reports, G4.1, 2024-2025 Operational Plan, Quarter 4 Performance Report, and I'll hand over to the General Manager of People and Strategy, Carly Quinn. Thank you, Carly.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. So whilst I have the pleasure of sitting here and presenting this report once again, it's the Quarter 4 report for the year, so the final report for the 24-25 year. And whilst I have the pleasure of presenting it, it really represents all of the wonderful work that the organisation has done for that quarter. This report highlights that we have 7 out of our 8 priority initiatives completed as of the end of the year, and that 8th one has 2/3 of the project completed and a solid plan in place to get that final facility over the line. We have completed the extended initiatives, so the one initiative that was left over from the previous year is also now completed, and we came in under budget of around about 200,000 under budget, so it's also been delivered with strong financial stewardship. The report also highlights the mitigation of our corporate risks and how these initiatives particularly helped us mitigate corporate risks such as asset management maturity, climate change, critical service delivery, cybersecurity, financial sustainability, and workforce safety and wellbeing. And it also gives a lot of detail around the actual outcomes from each of the initiatives. But at a high level, we've made community facilities more accessible and inclusive. We've strengthened community involvement in our decision making, optimised our maintenance delivery, made it easier for our people to stay safe, further embedded constructive culture. We have made a long way towards making our employee facilities safer. We still have that one more facility to finish off this year. We have a solid plan towards Target Zero and a healthier environment for council facilities and assets. We've also done a lot of work on the future of fleet and ensuring that we are going to have the right size fleet for our business needs moving forward. The report, as usual, also has a lot of business as usual stories in there, so we strongly encourage the community to have a look at all of the wonderful activity that's been going on. But it also, for transparency, also talks about some of the challenges that we've experienced during the quarter as well. So I commend the report to you for endorsement. Once it's endorsed, it'll be published today.
Fantastic report. You mentioned fleet. Where are we at with that?
So the technology has now been rolled out. I think it's a really good example of how sometimes we're such a progressive council and we love to improve, and we have a lot of continuous improvement going along across the organisation. Sometimes with that improvement comes change for our people, and this particular year had some significant change for our people. And I think it's a really good example of where we've had to take stock and actually understand what that change meant for our people and make sure that we roll it out properly. So it took us longer, but we now have the technology in place. It's landed well with our people are supporting it, and we're starting to get the data now that tells us where is our fleet being most used, are there any opportunities where they're being underutilised, can they be redeployed in other places, do we have the right size fleet for the work that we need to do, and that'll help inform your business decisions at next budget.
Making our employees' facilities safer, that is the Tannum Depot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tannum Depot and the Calliope Depot completed, and Turkey Beach Depot is the one that's still to be completed.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Well done. I was going to say Carly.
Team.
Well done, Carly.
I
You've done
just
all of
present
this
it.
all by yourself. Come on, Lisa, step up. No, well done, everyone involved. I think it's a fantastic report. It'd be lovely if some people would have read it outside our organisation. Okay, can I have a mover for that? Unless there's questions? No? Mover for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Holzheimer, Councillor Deputy Mayor, Councillor Deputy Mayor. All in favour? Carried. Yeah, Councillor, that's right. G4.2, Access and Inclusion Action Plan Report, January 25 to June 25. I'll hand over the General Manager of Community and Lifestyle, Kylie Lee. Thank you, Kylie. Welcome, Jacqueline, as well.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors. I do have Jacqueline Iwasaka with us today. Jacqueline's now acting in our Community Partnerships Manager role, while Bri does a secondment as the Manager of Strategy and Improvement. Jacqueline's also one of the leading forces for our Access and Inclusion Plan, so I'm glad to have her here today. So as you know, councillors, we endorsed the Access and Inclusion Action Plan as part of our operational plan items for 24-25. So we launched it in June 2024, and since then we've been doing some great things across the organisation and across the region. One of those things that I'm really proud of is the establishment of the Access and Inclusion's Champion Group, which is a really active and passionate group from across our organisation and they really help us to keep access and inclusion at front of mind, which is really great. In the past 6 months, from January to June, of the 74 deliverables in the plan, 15 are now complete, 13 are continual activities, 31 are future activities, 7 are on track, 7 have a new time frame, and 1 is taking a new direction. Councillors, we have provided highlights in the report so that you can read them. However, I would like to take the opportunity to just discuss some of those highlights to promote some of the meaningful activity that we are undertaking over the past 6 months. I'd also like to acknowledge again the guidance and focus of Jacqueline, who leads this initiative for us for our organisation, our champions, our operational teams who are supporting us in delivering some of these actions, and some of our key stakeholders that are really giving us the intel on making these changes meaningful for us. So I will hand over to Jacqueline to talk about some of the highlights that we've achieved over the past 6 months. Jack, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so we've really seen a lot of highlights in the last 6 months. It's been a really exciting time, and we have received lots of positive feedback from the community on those as well. So some of the ones that I've included in the report is some of our physical access upgrades that were part of the operational plan item for the last financial year. So we've seen a lot of those small physical access upgrades, which more to come over the next 2 years as well. Council achieved our Welcoming Cities accreditation in March this year, which is a great initiative and gave us some wonderful feedback to keep working on those as well. We did some great work in the recruitment space featuring pop-up interviews. So this is about breaking down the barriers to becoming employed at council. And we had pop-up interviews for our parks and garden labourers, which was really successful. So we went on to do that for our cleaning labourers as well. We ran Auslan classes for council employees, so we had 12 council employees who have done that basic Auslan class now and received really positive feedback, especially from our library staff who are doing Auslan songs and introductions as part of their story time, as part of their regular story time. And lastly, featured in the report, we also had Luminous 2025, which we did put a lot of extra thought and planning into making sure that Luminous 2025 was one of our most accessible and inclusive events to date.
Yeah, and it was.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And if I can just pull out something in there and just thank councillors for their support as well. We have trained a lot of people in our hidden disabilities, our Sunflower initiative, and I really thank councillors for getting on board with that as well. Change like this happens from leading from the top, so I do appreciate your focus on our access and inclusivity as well. So thank you. Invite any questions on our report.
Thank you. And just in case he's watching online, thank you, Councillor, or former Councillor Rick Hanson, who was the driving force behind this for many years as well. Questions, councillors? No questions? Can I have a mover for the officer's recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Seconded, Councillor Churchill. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Jacqueline. We'll now move to the next item on the agenda, which is G4.3, Councillor Complaint Investigation Policy, and I'll hand over to the Acting General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risks, Kim Marks, and welcome to the table, Kim.
Good morning and thank you. This item seeks Council's consideration of a revised councillor complaint investigation policy and a decision on whether to form a standing committee for dealing with referred councillor conduct matters. The updated policy is based on the state government template and aligns with the Queensland Government's example policy, ensuring compliance with the Local Government Act. The officer's recommendation is to repeal the existing policy and replace it with the revised policy to improve clarity and structure. In addition, Council may but is not required to form a standing committee to decide on referred councillor conduct matters. The report outlines the benefits, risks and considerations for this approach. The policy balances transparency and accountability with rights to privacy, fair hearing and freedom of expression while managing legal and reputational risks. By adopting the policy, Council will meet its legislative obligations and ensure a clear, consistent process for managing referred councillor conduct matters. I welcome any questions.
Thanks, Kim. We still meet our obligations by continuing with our existing policy, no? Tanya?
If we were not to adopt this new policy?
Yeah.
No, it's not ideal because the legislative references.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, the new policy aligns with the new legislative provisions regarding conduct breaches.
Fine. Happy to accept that officer's recommendation. Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, thank you. Read through that. I see in there that if you don't have a standing committee at the time, that's too late because it's got to be in place before an incident. So it makes sense that we should have that. As far as the number of councillors involved in that panel, I would suggest that the whole of council should be a part of the standing committee, whereby you can draw on the entire council team, which would alleviate any problems with conflicts of interest and what have you. So that would be the way I would look at it, and interested to hear other opinions on that.
Yep. Councillor Holzheimer online.
Thank you. I was wondering as well some questions about the standing committee, and that's in regards to, I understand that actually creates more transparency for community. I also respect that there's a need for confidentiality and privacy for councillors, because sometimes these issues are not actually verified and can have reputational risks. I was just wondering, how do we still demonstrate transparency to community in regards to the process for reviewing these, I suppose, allegations during the investigation process if we weren't to do a standing committee? Does that make sense, that question?
Sure. Councillor Holzheimer, we don't currently have any standing committees, so at the moment we don't have procedures for our standing committees, but they would align very much with our existing meeting procedures policy. So regardless of whether we were to determine a matter in a general meeting or at a standing committee, there's still going to be the same level of transparency for the community. There are provisions under certain circumstances to close a meeting to discuss different elements of it. However, the decision must be made in the public space. So regardless of which way you go, and the only instance really where under the policy you need to refer to a standing committee is if the conduct breach involves the mayor. So if the mayor is the subject officer for that breach, the policy says that it's referred to a standing committee, but otherwise it can be determined in a normal general council meeting, and often that's occurring with other councillors as well. So if you would like to create a standing committee, then I'll bring back a further report with some terms of reference, and so that we can confirm that. Adopting the policy at this point will be sufficient, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
So with the standing committee, I'm unsure, I suppose, at the moment. I think I'm just happy to listen to what the other councillors actually have to say before I ask anything else, actually. Sorry about that. Thanks.
That's all right. Councillor Cameron, then Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, look, I think the standing committee and the way it's dealt with there is only relative to councillor conduct. When it comes to corruption or misconduct, that's dealt with a different way, because it's got to go straight to the Office of the Independent Assessor, which will make a determination, and then it goes to the other authority. So corruption. That's my understanding, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. This is only dealing with suspected conduct breaches.
Alleged.
Alleged, that's correct. Well, it's where something's gone to the Office of the Independent Assessor and they've referred it back to council to deal with.
Yep.
Serious misconduct,
Straight to
corruption
the principal's office.
would
Yeah.
go to the CCC, yes.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, like we saw recently in the media, Council. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wagner, I can see your hand up, but the yellow screen wasn't on.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
come to you straight after
no, that's
Councillor
all right.
Churchill.
That's all right, Mayor Matt. No, I agree with
Who's next?
Councillor Cameron, is that we're all in, we all make that decision. I'm just not sure about the standing committee. I need to see what that framework or what that role would be, because that was what the Office of Independent Assessor was created for. And I have another concern. Is this like us investigating our own? We don't need to be. We need to be able to pass a pub test, and I think we need to be independent enough to send it off to the OIA. But my question appropriately, where does the CEO sit in amongst this role in relation to the complaint process?
I'm not sure of the specifics of your question, but it's the mayor that manages the complaints about councillors. Obviously, we provide support as officers and things like the engagement of investigators externally and all those sorts of procedural matters, but it's the mayor that manages this process.
And we're talking about if Councillor Churchill was to yell and swear at the Deputy Mayor and then stand, which he would never do, but if that was to happen, then this would be the sort of conduct breach we're talking about.
Yeah, as long as we're not overcomplicating this.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I think we easily could. Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, look, I'm a bit with Councillor Churchill on this. It does seem odd that the Office of the Independent was set up to manage these complaints and then going, oh, well, there's something in this, so we'll just send it back to a council to deal with it essentially internally. It just seems like an odd thing to do, that's all. I mean, if this is standard practice, and I mean, I don't have an issue with it, but it just seems very convoluted to me. But anyway, that's just my comment.
At the risk of creating an OIA complaint, they've been pretty useless, to be quite frank. There it is. There we go.
Just to confirm that the policy is
you're on
reflective
record now,
of
Mayor
legislation.
Matt.
Oh, well, on record publicly, because their performance has been lacking at best as an OIA, and they know it, and that's why there's been changes at the top, not just there, also at the other level of. Anyway, this is to deal with minor issues that are dealt with that are at a council meeting that we can manage, I think, very simply ourselves. Sorry, Councillor Wagner. Then I'll go to Tanya.
Yeah, look, we've all seen some examples in another state of some really, I suppose, behaviour we don't want to see in our chambers, and I get that. But trying to deal with these things, if there's already hostility internally in a small community, like ours is a bit bigger, but there's smaller communities too, it seems silly to send it back into a council to be able to manage their own issues. The mayor, now that's okay if we've got a good mayor that can manage these situations, which I think we do, but there is always, with a change of mayor at some point in time, if we look at other councils as examples, to manage it, often the mayor is, could be dragged into it too. So I don't know, I'm just not convinced this is, I know this is standard and I'll support it, but I'm not sure why this has happened.
Tanya, do you want to add anything to that?
Look, I just wanted to make it clear that the policy is straight from the department. It is their example and recommended approach that the majority of councils in Queensland have adopted. And this is straight from the legislation. So we're not adding any more complicated factors into it. We don't have a choice as to whether or not council investigates and decides these decisions.
And Councillor Patrick.
Just wondering, what's the resources, costs involved with doing this? Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of resources and costs, fortunately, we haven't had any of these, which is thank you for being remarkable councillors. Touch wood. However, the policy provides for us to appoint an independent external investigator, which is consistent with the way that we manage a lot of our complaints with staff conduct. So in my experience, you could be looking from $10,000 to $25,000 for an investigation, depending on its complexity. That absorbs a lot of the resource requirements, and then the mayor would get support through governance and the CEO's office.
This is really, and it's a Queenslander, be careful. This is, let's just say other states, it's needed where some councillors see it as a game of just lodging complaints against each other. That doesn't happen in our chambers. It's never happened in our chambers. And there are other councils, even in Queensland, where that they can't get along, which is disappointing, but that's how it is. And I'm very conscious of the fact I'm state and national president, so I don't need it in the Courier Mail, so I'm not naming anyone, but sometimes it's hard for people to get along. It's political in some councils. It's not the case here, never has been. So I think we could just adopt the officer's recommendation and consider at another time whether we want to look at standing committees once we understand how they would work. Thank you, Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, my only other comment would be the word investigation. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation today, but I think there needs to be a little bit more homework done in relation to a standing committee. And I speak with some level of experience here, is that investigating our own, the word investigation, whether that's forensic investigation, whether that's suspected criminal investigation, whether that's behaviour investigation, I'm sorry, but I'd be totally opposed to us investigating our own team. That wouldn't stand well with me, sorry.
No, that's something we can consider at another day if we accept you're moving the officer's recommendation. That doesn't include...
Happy to move the officer's recommendation as it stands today, and if there's any necessity in relation to a compliance with legislation, as our manager for governance and risk has indicated, then perhaps that can be a little bit of work that could be done at a later time. But I think we need to hasten slowly on this, even though you've indicated, or the officers indicated, a number of local governments are already doing it. I'm opposed to councillors investigating councillors.
Thank you. I'll get a seconder, then Councillor McClintock has a question. Are you happy to second?
Look, happy to second, but I reiterate that it's only conduct that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So it's minor level stuff. Yeah. And as far as the Office of the Independent Assessor is concerned, they only look at it to see if there's a case to answer in the first instance. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest, as you're saying, that a lot of this stuff should be sorted out within the council group themselves, which we would obviously have no trouble doing that. So you look, happy to second. I am along the journey with Councillor Churchill that does look like it needs a little bit more investigation as to how we move forward with it, but I think we've got to get something moving to start with, so I'm happy to second on this occasion.
Thank you, Councillor McClintock.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with that term of investigation, even in the policy name, but the one I probably want a little bit of answer to, and I was trying to understand as I was reading through this, sorry, my whole thing keeps closing down every time I try and look at it. So I'll go off memory. There was a section there about reporting. I was just trying to understand the way it was all worded. If somebody complains about somebody, does it have to have a full report process every single time? What's the thresholds on somebody throwing out a jab from community, or is this only internal? How did that all work? So that, because there was also some lines there, I'm sorry, it's deleted itself, around the councillor being named but no one else being named, things like that. So further to some comments, I can't remember who made them just earlier, that unsubstantiated complaints or jabs just because somebody's upset with somebody. What is the reporting process on that, and how does that look for us in this policy, and is it different to what it's been previously? I guess is my big question.
Yeah, so the policy reflects the last lot of changes that were made to the Local Government Act. To be clear, the things that are referred to us from the OIA have already been assessed. So they've already been assessed to say, yes, there is potential for a case to be answered for. We're referring it to council to outwork that. Yes, complaints could be from a member of the community, a member of staff. It could come from a range of places. Unsuitable meeting conduct, which is unruly behaviour in meetings and things, that gets dealt with in the meeting at the time. It's only when you've got a multiple number of them that it would become part of this. The report, the procedure requires a summary report to be provided and published. And yes, like a lot of these reporting frameworks, it does protect the person making the report, and that's to encourage reporting.
Of course.
And it's common through a number of things. So there's two stages of reporting. There's a summary report that's provided, but then there's a more detailed report that's provided after, and the policy provides for a number of redactions and things like that.
I guess where my concern comes from is we have a very functional boardroom in many regards, but I can see a scenario, or potentially when I was reading through that policy, where a member of public or a potential future councillor, we don't have a functional boardroom, any other scenario, it just keeps repeating and it just causes a lot of problems, I guess. We want to have a clear process for how people can be reported, for how people can be investigated, to make sure that OIA whole process is in place. But I guess what we don't want to see is somebody who just wants to cause problems. We have a policy in place that means that we just constantly have to, I guess, jam the whole system up, and then other things are actually not functional in amongst that. Is there a process in there that for like a vexatious type of input where it's just someone that just really doesn't like somebody and they're just clearly making problems, and we've got to keep reporting on it, bringing it to the council, doing all these processes? That's my concern, I guess. I'm just looking for a little bit of comfort that we're not going to have 17 agenda items every week because somebody's really upset with somebody and just trying to create a big issue.
Yeah, Councillor McClintock, at both the Office of the Independent Assessor level and at council, there are ways, there are points at which an investigation can be ceased. But it really is very difficult for me to say that we can eliminate all of them because it's on a case-by-case basis, and it will really depend on the facts. But again, we've had a great history, and hopefully that's the way we stay.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I might just make a comment, I don't have the figures to hand, but there are very few number of these that are referred to councils across the state. This legislation has been in place for some time. We've had a policy for some time. I don't believe adopting this policy is going to impact on that frequency, but it is quite low, and there are a number of councils who've had multiple referrals. So when you look at the impact on councils making these decisions, it's not a big impact, but I think the legislation is the legislation. This is a policy we must have. Your decision making's around sort of how we outwork that, but that's limited in itself as well. But I don't anticipate there'll be an influx of complaints, but it is quite a strenuous process the OIA go through, and they don't refer back to councils lightly. So there is a small number, and perhaps we can bring back some of that data if you'd like to talk about the committee option to inform some of that, because it is a low number, and I know that they are being very proactive in terms of vexatious complaints as well and repeat complaints. So
yeah, I think I get a little bit of comfort from the way that you've explained it, I think, here in this last few moments, because I think in my head, as I was reading through the policy, is Councillor McClintock parked in my car park, and I'm really upset about that, and I'm going to report it, and there's a whole reporting process that has to be followed. That seems really lethargic as far as the amount of effort that needs to go into those sort of complaints versus the actual legitimate complaints that are found by the OIA to have some sort of backing and substance to them. That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Churchill, further question?
Oh, no, not really. I think Councillor McClintock raises an extremely valid point there, but Look, as I said before, I'm happy to move the motion. I am certainly not opposed to the officer's recommendation, but please be very mindful that, like anything, the fundamental legal principle of anyone, and I look at all my colleagues, and I with the highest integrity, is that we're all innocent until proven guilty, and I certainly don't plan to be part of anything that's being a judge and jury to any of my colleagues.
Thank you. I can't see it's going to actually happen in this chambers anyway. But it's good to have the policy in place.
The legislation does say that you are the judge and jury for your colleagues in this instance. Just that if that's where you have concerns, that's the advocacy efforts around the legislation. Unfortunately, we can't change that.
Well, the onus of responsibility is not necessarily on those that are accused; it's the ones that have to prove it. And unless you can, convince me otherwise, I'm not all that excited about being involved in an investigation of any of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's no need to, for the record, at this point.
Yeah, good on.
Thank you. All right, we have a mover in Councillor Churchill, the second in Councillor Cameron. No further questions or comments? Put the motion. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you, Kim. Welcome to the table for your first one. Could you bring something nicer next time? We got one more. 4.4. Monthly financial statements for the period ending the 31st of July 2025. Back to you, Kim.
Thank you again. This is your first monthly financial report for the 2025-26 financial year. We have seen a steady start to the year with 8.49% of the year having passed. I'll touch on 5 key points that provide a snapshot of our current position and performance. Recurrent revenue sits at $19.3 million or 7.26% of budget. This reflects our normal collection pattern for the first month of the year. Rates and access charges generation has been completed and notices are to be issued to ratepayers in the coming weeks. We have a healthy cash position, currently holding sufficient unrestricted cash to cover 6.57 months of operating expenses, well above our 3-month target, and providing a strong buffer for planned and unplanned needs. Our operating surplus ratio is impacted by timing. The year-to-date ratio is minus 14.35%, which is expected at this stage of the year, as operating expenditure is mostly linear, whereas major income items such as grants and dividends aren't usually recognised until the final quarter. This isn't anticipated to affect us achieving our budgeted surplus at the end of the year. Our capital works program has commenced and $5.1 million has been spent to date, representing 4.81% of the $105.2 million program, with the largest early investment in the roads portfolio. This is also consistent with project ramp-up cycles. Rates collection is trending positively. Outstanding rates are at 1.63% of gross rates levied, an improvement on the same period last year, which was 1.86%, indicating strong early payment performance. So overall, our position at the end of July reflects expected seasonal patterns, with a solid start to revenue collection, a strong cash buffer, and early progress on capital projects. Whilst this is a fairly typical report for this time of the year, we will continue to monitor our performance closely to ensure that we remain on track to deliver on our budget and service commitments for the year. Welcome any questions.
Questions, councillors? Not one. I'm going to say not getting away that easy. I will.
No, it's almost a blank canvas, isn't it? So
It's hard.
So happy to move the report, sir.
Okay, thank you. Moved Councillor Cameron, seconded Councillor Patrick. Councillor McClintock, you have a question?
Yeah, not as I said, it's very, very early days, so it's hard to read any sort of story into anything happening too much. I guess there's a few little things there, but the general purpose grant, it's just a little bit of 10.3 on page 23 there, 10.3 in the table and 10.4 in your comments. I'm not sure where that extra 100,000 went or is. If that's just a typo or...
No, that's actually, so we receive and estimate our grant based on the things we have when we did our budget. So that was the 10.3. There's then a finalisation of that allocation by the department. So when we receive that grant that's prepaid in June, that's based off an estimate of what our grant would be, not the final allocation. So that final allocation is now being determined, and that's the 10.4. So we've been very close to that mark. Yeah,
That's good.
Very close. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. No, that's fine.
It's threepence compared to what you've got here, Canberra.
That's in the
Don't
right
get too
direction,
ex-
very
the right
gently,
direction.
in the right direction.
Yeah. Instead of taking money off us, they gave us a little tiny bit more. We're very grateful.
It's they flicked you the crumbs. And the other one was just a little bit of commentary, if you could provide on page 29, around very concerning that there's 114 assessments versus the 41 in the year before. The number of repayment plans that were entered into for last year, was that significantly different to the year before originally? Is that...
We'll have to get the exact numbers and report back to you, but generally we've seen an increasing trend.
Yep.
But yeah, we can actually give you a report back on the total number of those. Yeah.
'Cause that's a significant jump, obviously, particularly by percentage.
Yeah,
I'd
so-
be very interested to know whether that's something that moves that sort of much over the years, or are we really on a scary trajectory of people who are struggling to...
Well, I think it's the other
Well,
way.
I think
I think it's the other way. I think it's people who had previously not been on a plan, and that's
Right.
what Elise has told us once before, that are now hopping on a plan, and they
Brilliant.
weren't on it because they hadn't sort of had the conversation with our rates department, and this way they're not getting charged any interest at all. If they're on a plan and they keep to their plan, they can pay their rates. So there are people struggling, but I think it's actually
Yeah.
a good news story that they're on a plan, rather than going further and further behind and potentially having their houses sold.
That's-
So I think this is a good trend.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
and that's demonstrated in that outstanding rates percentage.
Yep.
So that, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. No, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
But the rates department have done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's Elise, but it's probably her and her team, of getting people on those plans. And once they've been on them once, they will tend to stay on them as well until they can maybe get themselves in advance and then take advantage of that discount period we offer. 60 days discount period is pretty good as well, which not too many councils offer that kind of extended time to take advantage of the discount.
No, fantastic. Thank you.
All right. No further comments or questions? We did have a mover and a second, didn't we? Thank you. All in favour? And that's carried. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Mark. Councillor reports. Do we have any councillor reports? None online? No? No councillor reports, no urgent business, no notices of motion, no confidential items. Declare the meeting closed at 10:15 a.m. Thank you for your attendance.